And all right, hey guys, this is our second human design support call that Leisha's going to lead. And because it's February and we have a focus on ancestry and lineage and relationships, one area where we can look in the human design chart has to do with our emotions. And so I wanted Leisha to talk about specific, and she's going to just give us some tips on it, and then also have time for personal Q&A. And so this is for our membership. So everybody that is in the membership will be able to see the replay. I know we had at least one person that had some questions for you, Leisha. Did she email you then?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So that will get addressed. And then Judith, you have not met Leisha yet, but Judith is no stranger to human design. And she recently, I think, joined the HD group here in Austin. So hopefully you guys will get to meet each other in person. So if we want to get going, I'd love to sit back and learn from you.
Okay. Oh, we have someone else joining, and it's Cassie. That's very exciting. So I do want to just go in. Hi, Cassie.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. We're just getting started. I did want to just kind of, does this sound good, Tiffany, to do just like a reminder of this is what human design is. I feel like I could hear it many, many times. It would still give me something new. So I'm going to start with just a quick thing about what it is, and then we'll go into relationships and solar plexus. Does that sound good?
That does. I don't know if it's my internet that's unstable, so it's a little rough on my end. Or
Mine
are you
too.
guys all hearing each other?
No, it's rocky here too.
Okay.
It's all going out.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, yes. So
I think it's Tiffany's internet, because I hear Leisha just fine.
Okay, so yes, go ahead then. Go ahead.
I cannot answer you because there's glitches. So, okay. So just as a quick reminder for myself and all of us about what is human design in a simple way. It's really a system for making decisions as yourself, and it kind of brings the really logical, mechanical, detailed awareness, and really for how we make decisions and how we're each unique, gives us practical tools for navigating those decisions correctly. And it's like what I love, it's a clean and clear strategy and authority for operating within your own mechanics. So, and then of course, as we say, most importantly, it is not a belief system. In fact, just blind belief is not encouraged. Skepticism is encouraged. So it's, the only thing is it's basically, it's an experiment. And the only way you can validate it as a scientist ourselves, is to try it for yourself and then see what you experience and see what data collects and what the patterns emerge over time. There's a feeling that I'm experiencing at this point in the process of it's just like this relaxation into what is and who I am. It's like an appreciation for myself that I didn't even know, I didn't even truly know all my treasures before. So I love that. Do you want to add anything, Tiff? No.
Perfect. Human design for me is a synthesis of through the tools of astrology, numerology, through the tools of using psychic development. Now I can see where that all is synthesized. So this crazy little human design chart explains so much, and it's like you could deep dive into each one little section for the rest of your life and be amazed. What I love about human design is that it is an experiment. And so when I'm in experiment mentality, there's no fault. Nobody can do anything wrong. We're just trying something on. You know what I mean? And so what we're going to try on today is this part of our chart that I feel like it's the solar plexus part, but I guess maybe would you mention how the chakra system had changed? And then that would help maybe some people to orient, because we're raised in Western culture. Most of us are raised in Western culture on this call, that there are 7 chakras. And that's a little different in the human design system. So as we're looking at a body chart, that also might be a little useful tidbit to put in there.
Yeah, and you're right. There's just so many bunny holes, and so it's hard to include it all into an elevator speech. Me and Tiffany always talk about that. We're like, but this has to be added to the elevator speech, but this has to add it. So thank you for asking that. A few hundred years ago, and there's a precise date and mechanism and exactly what happened. So that's a bunny hole. Humanity mutated. However, until the human design system came to us, which was in the 80s, and then it took time to spread, we were not aware of this mutation that all of humanity had. So before a few hundred years ago, we had 7 chakras, which were, of course, energy hubs that sort of had different functions and all of that. However, if you've seen the chakra map, it's 7 centers and they're all in the line. It's a linear movement of energy and awareness that moved through our humanity as humanity through every one of our bodies. And it was all to go up to the mind to strategize over conquering our environment in order to survive as a species and in order to ensure resources, right? So, however, when this mutation occurred, and it's not just this chakra split into this, and it's like there was a mutation. There was many things that mutated. There's 9 chakras. So instead of it being a linear thing, there's 6, and then there's 1 going over here, and then there's 2 on either side. And it's more of a ping pong way that our energy circuitry is built. And it's the shift is that so now we have 9 and we call them centers in human design. The awareness before was, again, it was about mind, using our minds to strategize, to conquer our environment. However, now we are here to use the awareness of our mind and body in order to see the world and relax into life. We have conquered the environment. Humanity has conquered the environment. Now we're not here to conquer the environment, worry about resources, money, bills, careers, all that stuff. I know it's very to hear that, right? Because of course that's what that's what the world is doing. But it's because there's not awareness of this new mode of how we are evolved to operate, which is through awareness, not survival. So that's kind of the general mutation that occurred from 7 to 9 centers. It's very complex. We can go real deep into that, but just as a high level, that's it. And really, it's this tool. I love that, it is all these different systems. It's a synthesis. It's not, PC, and like you can't just hone in on one aspect. It just like our body graph and the way that our awareness works now, it's ping-ponging all around and all connected in different ways. So that's why it is. You can study it forever, or you can take it real simple to the very simple strategy and authority tools. Just go on that. You're like, that's all I need. I just need my decision-making strategy. Boom. Then that's going to have a very transformative and like relaxing effect on your life, because you can learn to understand yourself and others and how you move through the world and interact, and others interact with you.
Stop.
And I love that it's what we're aware of, which, a lot of systems show us what our mind is thinking. We can access that. Even astrology gives us the access of our imprinting when we were born. But the thing human design adds, it's our body awareness. And that was imprinted 3 months before we were born. So that's, again, a whole bunny hole, but it's these 2 binary awarenesses that come together as the synthesis of the body chart. And human design allows us to see what are the mechanics of my body and the mechanics of how my mind is thinking, and what does that together show me with my unique operating manual in the world. So again, and it shows how we interact with ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we see things, how we interact with others in relationships, how we move through the world, and our environment impacts us and we impact it, how, our career, all the different things. So to move to kind of relationships, which is sort of what we're focusing on today with the solar plexus, I love this Ra quote and Ra Uru, who is the founder, he's the one that the information all came to, and it was a whole experience that is very interesting as well, bunny hole. He says, if you allow someone to be who they are and they allow you to be who you are, then that is love. Anything else is torture. And honestly, like, there's a lot of levels and depth to that quote, but for me at this point, 2.5 years in, I mean, we can all resonate with that. It's like, I want to be myself, but then it's sometimes hard to, interpret or see the other and allow them to be themselves. Now, I do want to have a caveat in here, which is this discussion and these mechanics. I mean, we're really assuming that it's like regarding a relationship that you would, want to continue, that you want to understand, that you want to, see the other person and they see you, and maybe there's miscommunications, misunderstandings. It's not really going down the like, this is a not safe, aggressive, want to get out of relationship. So just to note that involves another track, which would be, become steps in becoming aware of any traumas and, different things and abuse and whatever. And then that's a whole other track. So I just want to acknowledge that. If it's not abusive, if it's safe, that's kind of what we're referring to. And as a general rule, you can go all the way up to the very simple, which is if you're in a relationship that you want to continue or don't want to continue, you can follow your strategy and authority to get in or to stay in a healthy way, or to get out and even to start a new one, so it can always go back to that foundational, simple element. And we always say, Tiffany and I repeat it to each other all the time, simple, not easy. It's when you know the mechanics, you're like, okay, that's simple. It's not anyone's fault. Now I have to involve my emotions, which is from the solar plexus. Now I feel all these things. Now they feel all these things. We feel these things together and we're amplifying and we're whatever. So that's the part where it's not easy. It cannot be easy. However, it's very rewarding, satisfying, fulfilling, relaxing, beautiful, peaceful, all those things. And it's who we really are, each of us, so you can feel that in an almost indescribable way. So is it okay to get into the solar plexus kind of functions and how that looks?
Yeah.
Okay. Get in it.
Get it. I'm
Okay.
dying to know here.
Dig in. Okay. So the solar plexus in the human design chart is, if you look at your chart, like, and I'm probably mirrored. If you're looking at your chart, it's going to be the one on the right, kind of furthest point on the corner.
I'm going to share my screen.
So you can, yes. Oh, that's great.
Okay. So.
And so if you see that, so when you run your chart, you can go to mybodygraph.com. It's you can do a free chart. Now there's a lot of add-on options and right? But yeah. Do you want to hover over the solar plexus?
I do.
Okay, so you can see here on your chart, if it is a white, center, which Tiffany's is, that means you are in human design. The language we use is undefined solar plexus. Okay, so Tiffany has an undefined solar plexus, and we can get into definition, undefined and defined. And basically what it means is Tiffany does not, if someone has an open solar plexus like that, they do not have consistent energy they don't have consistent access to how their emotions operate. So someone that's defined is definitely working on an emotional wave. They have this, maybe they're kind of there's this juiciness, this almost like sexiness to someone that's defined with the solar plexus. The solar plexus center, so we'll get into that a little bit more with the defined, not defined thing. The solar plexus center, if you want to hover over it, I like to see all the different things that are showing up for the the solar plexus. And of course, these are all the other 9 centers that, have their different functions and role with the body graph. So holding it over the solar plexus, this is the emotional and nervous system, emotional wave, moods, feelings, emotions, desires, passion, romance, sex drive, and food. So again, this is like what makes life juicy. This is what makes the human experience juicy. It's like that food is so good. Oh, the passion, the romance, the poems, the art, all the music, that comes from the solar plexus, our emotionality as humans. So what that means is that I can't quite watch the chat, so maybe you can, Tiff, if that, I see some things coming through.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, just let me know if something comes up. But
yes.
Yeah, so it is, someone that, okay, so it's what what makes life juicy, and that is from pleasure to pain. So that's a huge gap of experience that all humans, we can feel that. If you're undefined there, you're going to have an inconsistent relationship. Sometimes you might be real cool and calm. And I mean, actually, when you're alone, you're probably more cool, calm, and collected. If you are undefined solar plexus, you're not necessarily sending out emotional waves into the world. When you are defined, you are the one sending emotional waves out into the world. Okay, so your wave works differently. And Tiffany, as someone that's undefined, she has some different gates and things coming off of there. You can see the red lines coming off. Those are the gates. When Tiffany's around certain people, the way, or environments, the way that they hook up her emotional system, her solar plexus, the way, whether it's defined, whether they are defined and she's now feeling what what the defined person is feeling, it's going to be an inconsistent way that your emotionality shows up, Tiffany, because of the undefined solar plexus, right? And I have that too. So just for reference. As we get into, okay, yeah. So the solar plexus is also a very strong motor. It actually is the strongest motor in the entire chart, which means it drives things toward being expressed, toward becoming reality, toward putting it in the material plane, manifestation, all those things. The solar plexus is driving feelings to come out of our mouths, if you want to simplify it. Now there's a lot to that, but so it is, just to note, if you are defined solar plexus, that is absolutely the authority in your chart. That's the inner system, guidance system in you that is going to guide your decisions. So that's why it's a decision-making tool. Now, we've got some references on the types and the strategies and all that, but just to refer to the solar plexus as the authority part of strategy and authority.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we know what everybody's is
Ooh.
in this particular group, just out of curiosity?
Good question.
Open or closed or defined or undefined? Do you guys know yours?
Raise your hand if you're undefined. Oh, okay. Cassie and Camden. And then if you're defined. Okay, so you guys do know. Awesome. Okay, good to know. That's a great question. Okay, so again, it's a strong motor. It drives things to be expressed. No, I love that. That's awesome. And the other thing is that half of humanity, now everything in the body graph is not like this, with different, who has a defined head, who has an undefined head. That's a different percentage. But with the solar plexus, half of humanity is defined, half of humanity is undefined. When you're undefined in any center, you're amplifying, you're more, it's almost like, I think of it as I'm more sensitive. You're more sensitive in that center. So you're actually feeling what others feel in that area more than they might even be aware of. Like, you're amplifying, you feel it times 10, times 100, right? So you're actually amplifying it. So as an undefined person, before human design and awareness of this mechanic and working with it, I thought I was the emotional person. Can anyone undefined relate to that? It's like, oh, I'm the one that can't keep my cool, because I'm like amplifying when things get escalated. And it's because, we can feel that so much stronger, so much more intensely than the person with the defined emotional system. And what that is it's almost like people that are undefined are not necessarily built to handle consistent, intense emotions. People that are defined are built to handle consistent, intense emotions because they have them within themselves. This wave, this, oh my God, everything, like, I'm so depressed, this pain, I'm in pain, hopelessness, all the way up to like, yeah, life is awesome, pleasure, like, I hope for everything, the world is great, all the things are this wave that emotionally defined people go through so they can handle those intense emotions because they've always had them. That's how they're built. That's how they are in the world, And so with the emotional wave, you can almost think of it as it's like a scanning process. So it's like, you've got to let it do its complete cycle. And us undefined people need to be aware of that too, because often we're drawn to people that are defined emotionally. It's the genetic imperative. We love what we're not, just inherent. It's the genes, whether we know it or not, that's what is naturally happening. So we'll be drawn to someone who is emotional, and there's a mechanic there that they may or may not be aware of their defined solar plexus, and we may or may not be defined, aware of ours, but we are often not, allowing, because of unawareness, right? Because we just don't know. We don't allow them to take the time to feel through their whole cycle. We want to push them. We want to, fix it. We want to, let's not upset them because I don't want to feel this part of the wave. Like, oh, they're here, or then when they go down, it's like, we might blame ourselves because we sent them into a thing. And so all of that is something to look at, but it's just the awareness that the solar plexus being might be in a place that there's no reasons for it. It's their chemistry. So not only does the defined person need to understand that hey, I need to take some time. I need to feel it out and get back to you. So they need to honor themselves by doing that. And the undefined in a relationship with that would need to say, you know what, take your time, no rush. And again, simple, not easy. It's not always easy to let the solar plexus kind of defined person determine the timing because they have to wait through their wave. So this comes back to surrendering and not letting our mind take over. And with all the, I need to protect myself because this is painful when they're in their low wave as an undefined person. I could go on and on about this, but I want to move. Do you have a question on there, Tiff?
Yes,
or?
I have some. And actually,
Yeah,
Camden
okay.
asked the question that
Yeah.
I was also thinking. So thank you, Camden. So her question is, would someone with an undefined solar plexus be more likely to be an empath? And I was also thinking this through because like my chart, you could see I had open head and ajna. So I was always thinking that was what would account for being empathic, but this is making more sense. So the question was brewing for me too. So could you, and there's different things at play, of course, and everybody's chart's unique. And of course we're all sensitive to each other, but would that be a way of understanding yourself as a more empathic person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the word, I often use the empathy word. It doesn't mean that a solar plexus defined person is not empathetic and can't feel emotion. They just have a different relationship with emotionality. Whereas we are going to be like, whoa, I can really intensely feel what you're feeling if we realize which emotions are coming from the other and which are coming from ourselves as an undefined person in the solar plexus. So yes, empathy for sure, comes in like that. To me, I feel that is a solar plexus thing. I know many defined solar plexus that are very empathetic. It's just that they don't react the same way to the intense emotions from others as like I would. I might just be like, oh my God, like it's just, I might intensify it and amplify it myself versus they might just say, that's what it is. Like, I can see that, So I definitely associate that with the undefined in a different way, sort of. And like you said, it's not just, okay, here's my one solar plexus and this is my one center and I can just look only at this part. It weaves into every single other thing, which is why we are each so very unique. There's only one person in existence that has every single gate and activation and center that you have, Tiffany, like only one person. So it's going to be a very unique way. And that's the experiment, is we have to just get into it and try the strategy and authority at the very simplest level. And then we start to see and feel all these nuances that are truly us and how they actually come together. And like what it feels like to me is like, there's no, like, because it's so naturally me, I'm like, there is no other better gate than that for me, than that center, than that open thing, than that. It's like, of course I have that. It fits perfectly with who I am because it's so natural to who I am. So anyway, it's hard to describe it really, but.
Well, and Judith has a good point in the chat. And Judith, if you want to unmute yourself, you can. Like, this whole call is for mainly the people that showed up that have questions. So yes. She's a really good point, which I think she describes it in a way that where you've taught me before, where she says, if you know empaths as energy feelers, then it wouldn't be about emotions so much as energy. And the way that I've heard you say it, it's like, it's just mechanics. It's nothing, there's no, it's just mechanics. It's just energy. We don't have to take any of it personally. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Which is so relieving. Like when people come to me, and sure, I have some house blessing routines that I do that make me feel more secure and clear in my field. But there's no amount of salt. There's no amount of sage. There's no amount of hymns. There's no amount of meditation that is going to prevent me from feeling every single thing that everybody else is feeling. So in my experiment, I have worked with being able to feel that and repeat it back as a form of that, my offers when I'm reading for people. It's like, here, let me put back what is already in you. And it's like, oh, you're psychic. It's like, well, kind of, but also I'm just feeling what you're doing already, like it's like a both and type of thing. So anyways, just feel free to unmute yourselves. I may not have communicated what you were saying very well. If you want to jump in, please do.
Yeah, I think for me as an emotional wisdom person, I usually refer to the authority as a wisdom, but I find that people who have open centers actually do a really good job of clarifying the emotions that they have wisdom about emotions that the emotional people don't. And so you can reflect back for us an emotional wisdom for us that we're often in the middle of experiencing, but cannot put clarity to. But the short answer is I don't really see empaths being related to defined or undefined with the solar plexus, because I have a lot of emotional people around me, emotionally defined people, and they're all high empaths. So, and the ones that I know that are not emotionally defined are also high empaths, but that's who I choose to hang out with. Like those are all my like big feelers, whether it's emotional feelers or energy feelers. So I haven't.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I have many solar, like both defined and undefined, that are can feel the things, right?
Mhm.
For me, it's the relationship, their relationship. So it becomes about my own relationship with what I feel. So am I aware of it coming from myself or from the other, right? Like, am I just picking up an anxiety and then I'm thinking I'm anxious? Or is it like, oh, the emotional person, I have the wisdom now, because that's what the open centers bring us, is the wisdom over time, right? It's not when we're young, we probably amplified and whatever, but over time, we learn about emotionality as an undefined solar plexus. So to me, it is about the relationship with that emotionality that we feel. So, I mean, I fully agree that, I mean, my partner, tons of people are emotionally defined, and there's an understanding of emotion because you experience that waves, always in your chemistry. So, I mean, I totally agree. However, I also think that it can be, because it is something that I'm so sensitive to, and it may be, again, it's other parts in the design, whatever, I definitely feel very strongly when often my solar plexus defined people are completely not aware that they're even feeling that, and I mean, it's like my partner will be in a low, will be anxious, and he's like, I'm not anxious. It's part of the not healthy state of the defined solar plexus, is blaming others for the feelings, right? For the moods, for the feelings. If you would have done this, or if you would have not done this, I wouldn't have been upset. It doesn't mean that undefined don't also have that, it's just the relationship with the emotions and how it affects your physicality also. If you're defined emotion, you can handle those people telling you what they feel all day, grief, all the things, right? If you're undefined, it has a different, you have a different relationship with that, and it may be inconsistent. It may be better that you don't take in intense emotions all the time. I mean, that physicality wise, that's what.
Yeah, and what's really
say,
interesting is
right?
what I'm recognizing between us is the definition of empath. Is we have different definitions of empath, and that's part of what's happening. So for me, when somebody asks me if they're empath, it's not just feeling somebody else's feelings or their emotions, but I'm aware, because of the way my whole system's connected, not human design system, but like my expanded system, I'm aware when we talk about empaths that a lot of times people are picking up on emotions, but they're also picking up on somebody else's energy field.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we go into that, then for me, it's a different sort of, we're playing games with each other's energy fields and the different whatever that comes off of us. So yeah, we don't need to belabor the point, but yeah.
I know. Well, enjoy the discovery that we're having. It all makes me think again back what Tiffany, what you were saying about if you have an undefined head and an undefined ego or heart center, which is matter and needing to prove yourself or not really knowing your own worth. So that is going to play into, like, you can pick up on, if you're undefined there, you could probably pick up on someone else's worth. Now, that's not necessarily emotions, but it could be connected to their emotions, so I think it goes back to the point of it all kind of weaves together, like you're both saying, to, depending on the rest of the definition and openness in the chart, So I think that it's great to, like, what is the definition of empath here that we're talking about? Because it is kind of more energy, and then from my experience, working with the mechanics.
Awesome. Good discussion.
Yeah.
So I want to just be aware that we have about half an hour left. And I know, like, what would feel good to me is to give everybody some nuggets that are defined, some signature tones. and then the nuggets maybe for the undefined people. And then we would still have plenty of rooms for questions. And so if you guys came with questions, it doesn't have to be about this topic either. If you have something else that's like, I had this happen in my experiment, then, you know, we'll have free for all. Does that work? Okay. All right. So
Great.
tell us about the Anns and the Judiths. What do they,
Of
what
the
do they
world.
need to know? Yeah.
The defined solar plexus. Yes. So of course we talked about the wave. So it's all about timing. And, you know, as in human design, we say no truth in the now, which is because anytime a decision comes to you, or, you know, a thing, life brings you something to respond to, or that it's an invitation or whatever, you are going to be at a certain point in your wave if you're defined emotionally. So you might be in the low, you might be in the high, but the mechanic is that if you make a decision in the low or the high, you haven't completed the scanning process of your particular emotional system. Like it's like a scanner. And if, you know, it's got to go completely through the bottom to the top, may need a few of those, you know, and it's just the chemistry of how it works. So there can be the way that shows up is waiting for clarity before decisions, playing hard to get, and cultivating patience. Like, you know what? And you don't have to use human design language and like, well, I'm defined solar plexus on the wave and the scanner. You know, you don't have to do that. You can just say like, I need to sleep on that, or I need to feel that out and I'll get back to you. I mean, there's, you know, we kind of can translate it into 7-centered communication that people can understand. And that way it honors you and honors them in like, they need to wait, you know? And then it's like, it's the healthy part of the defined solar plexus is not blaming others or situations for the feelings and moods, which we kind of mentioned. It's this rich emotional depth in life. There's highs, there's lows. It's sort of accepting that you have highs and lows, and almost like not trying to change the lows, not trying to, you know, look for reasons or stories or blaming or any of that with the lows, just, or even trying to avoid them, just accepting them and as part of the melancholy that is the chemistry in the defined solar plexus, in the wave. There's also this, you know, kind of like we mentioned, it's the juiciness. I had my one teacher describe it like that. There's this juiciness to solar plexus defined people. And so us undefined will be drawn to that. There's an attraction to that, you know? And then there's, it's appreciating the lows as well as the highs. When you're defined, and maybe some of the things to kind of watch for that are, you know, I guess they say unhealthy, or it could be, you know, part of the not self, to watch the pattern, watch the experiment, notice when it happens, is being impatient and kind of making spontaneous decisions without waiting for clarity. And what that can, it's almost like what I've experienced as the undefined, watching the defined over time, is it can be like, you know what, I want to knock that off the list. I want to get rid of this nervousness that I need to answer that. So I'm just going to answer, like, get it done, like get it out of my, you know.
You're
and it's like,
about the defined, right? That's the defined?
Defined.
Okay.
Defined. Yeah. So it can feel like you want to make a quick decision to get to offload that nervousness, because the emotional system, the solar plexus system, remember, is the nervous system. So for undefined people, I've done aura experiments where all the defined solar plexus left the room and all this undefined just sat there, and you can feel this nervousness, almost like this jitteriness, and that's part of the wave. It's just, that's the chemistry of it, you know. So it can be trying to like calm that nervousness by making a quick decision. But again, you haven't cycled through your entire scanner, and it's not letting your emotional system do its process. So it's, you know, there can be an impatience and wanting to get it out of the hopper or whatever. It's also looking for reasons or identifying with a particular point in the wave. You know, when you're low, it's like, well, this happened, that happened, and oh my God, what am I sad about? And, you know, and doing all that, instead of, hey, I'm in my melancholy right now. I'm going to go be alone, or listen to music, or cry, or create art, or, you know, whatever the thing is. It's, you know, the unhealthy part would be identifying with a particular part, or trying to find stories and reasons and all those things. It's just the chemistry. And again, simple, but not easy, you know, not easy. It's even trying to escape the low end of the wave, which I think we kind of said, and seeking the highs, trying to keep the pleasure and the, you know, and the hope and it's like, it's okay if you have that. You just got to learn to honor yourself in that. Anything to add from the define, like Anne or Judith, do you guys have anything to add for like what it's like to be defined in solar plexus? You don't have to. I just don't want to miss the, because I'm not, so I can't probably express it as deeply as someone that would be.
What would I say? I always find that the undefined in relationship to defined, the undefined have the capacity to settle the emotional wave with such grace. And so emotionally defined people are often, we don't have control over it. You probably see us from the outside thinking we have control over emotions, and it's really frustrating that you don't. It's just going to be an experience, and it comes and it goes. And we do our best to manage and find coping mechanisms for the emotions. But I find that when I'm with a really grounded, like stable, wise, undefined center, that they can like literally calm all the emotions and create a clarity that we don't necessarily walk around with all the time. So that would be my difference, my sense of it. And it's also really nice as a mom who is emotionally defined, when I'm hanging out with kids that are also emotionally defined, they just don't set me off. Like I can see that they can set off you guys with open centers, but mostly it's like, okay, they're just having their thing. They're going to need to cry, give them a lot of space to talk, give them a lot of space to emote. And don't take it in, don't engage with it. They just need to get it all out often. So that's practically speaking what it's like to hang out with us. Give us a lot of time to different waves. Like I don't need to talk it out a lot. I do know other emotional people that just have got to talk for a lot. So those are a couple of things I see. How about you, Anne?
Well, you're talking about these highs and lows and I have a lot of problems when I'm in those lows of not just recognizing this is just the way it is. It'll pass. I get real analytical. Why am I like this? I wasn't like this last week. Last week I was, everything was great. And so getting to know about more about human design has helped somewhat, so that when I'm in one of those lows, which I was on Monday, but of just stopping and going, it'll pass. Okay. And so it's a learning process for me. It's still kind of new.
That's great. I like that, because I like that you both were like, it can be frustrating, or, it can create a lot of mental shit when you can't control that. You can't. Yeah. I mean, you can't control that you're in a low or not. I have a very aware projector friend who's emotionally defined, Kate, and she just is so aware of it. She'll be like, I'm in a low, like I'm gonna go over there, but she's aware. She's not blaming others and vomiting her emotional chaos on others and all that stuff. Not that it's always vomiting, but you know what I mean? It can feel like that on the other side. And so, yeah, it's just, it would be difficult. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm not equipped that way. So I'm like, oh my God, that would be so hard to like be in those lows and not be able to change it. Like, you have an event, too bad, you're in a low. Like now what do you do? So, yeah, so I imagine, and I like how you said that, Judith, about can settle the wave, like an undefined solar plexus can help to settle and calm the wave. And that has been my experience of 2.5 years into this experiment. It's like now when an emotional person is like, I'm upset about this, or I feel this, I don't feel like I need to go fix it. I need to have solutions. I need to create the harmony. I need to, now it just almost feels like this clean vessel sort of feeling of like, it just goes through. And I'm like, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, I understand how you feel, you have a point, so you can, it's like becomes this clean thing where it's not attaching to any of the, like to the not self, not that this is 100%. I mean, this is a developing process, but often it won't attach to things in me where I now feel like I need to I need to fix it. I need to make it better for them. I need to help with their low wave. And not that you realize that's what the mechanic that's happening, because it sounds different in my head, of like, it just automatically comes out that I offer solutions and need to have all these reasons and help and, fix it and all these things. But it just feels clean and clear. Like you were saying, Judith, it's just like, I can just handle it and it can move through, and I feel and I see, but I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to, make it better, change their wave, like do anything. So it's been very liberating and eye-opening. And I just like how you both described that. Do you want me to talk about the undefined for a moment? Or does anybody have anything before I go into that?
Well, I just want to add like how useful this can be for either parenting or working with children or working with people that are younger that don't have access maybe to this information yet. Just having an awareness of it can be really life-changing. My daughter is not emotionally defined, very easy for me to be around. We are very smooth operating together, but when we get other people in our home that are defined, I find we have a different urgency, a different experience. And she's like the most even keel person I've ever met. But for me, like even just now, like somebody came to the door that I wasn't expecting, that somebody who's emotionally defined didn't let me know, and it threw me off for the last 5 minutes. I didn't hear anything you said. I'm over here like, like who's at my door? It's ice outside. Like there were so many things going on. And maybe you picked up on that, hopefully not. But that's what happens when somebody else's timing like interferes. I'm like that this whole 5 minutes, because the last time we had snowpocalypse, I had somebody at my porch knocking on my door that was not well. That did scare me, right? So there's this whole ding, 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 ding sequence of events that's going on this side. Now, in terms of parenting and working with that, like I really like what Judith said about, well, you just let them write it out, you can just let them write it out. If they're writing it out in front of me, I'm like, it's like not an easy thing to experience. And I'm really grateful that my daughter and I have the chemistry that we have, because it is smooth. But I don't think I had a point necessarily, other than like, this is such a great conversation to be able to be aware of the younger generation, right? Like to help them navigate their own. If we were parented with this information, what a different world, it would be. So that's all. So yes, sorry, I'm okay. If you guys have other comments, I'm just gonna.
Okay, if you want to ask. I couldn't help it. So good job.
Does stress in a defined person's solar plexus life make them have more ups and downs?
Oh yeah, I mean,
in their life at the moment.
Oh yeah, because they also may not be aware of their mechanics or doing their strategy and authority or waiting or doing all the things that human design gives us the tools to do. So yes, they could be in the wrong environment with the wrong people, doing the wrong thing, seeing the wrong thing, and then they're also not self. So absolutely, a lot of things can trigger a low wave, right, or a high wave. So that's kind of the experiment, is like, in other language can I use? And I know you're a projector, Cassie. So like when I'm asking a question, as am I, when I'm asking a question, what language can I use to get the message across, versus like, okay, if I use this inflammatory language, it may trigger an emotional response. And not avoiding that, because the not self theme of the undefined solar plexus is avoiding truth and confrontation. Because again, we're sensitive in that area. We can feel it big time, amplified. So I don't want to send anything because that's painful for me to feel. So I'm going to actually not tell the whole truth. I'm going to say a thing that, I don't really mean. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to go there. I'm just not even worth it. Those are all the ways that it can show up. So, but yes, a lot of things can trigger that. And I would say having stress is it's an indication of resistance in their life, right? Like, so that anytime we feel resistance, and there's different flavors of that, for me, it's a thing to look back and go, okay, am I following my strategy and authority? Am I waiting? Am I waiting for the invitation? Am I then listening to my splenic hit? And that's going to be different for each of us. So absolutely, I would say to that. Do you guys have anything with the defined solar plexus, anything to add to like when there's stress and the effect on your emotional system? we
I've
may have
never really thought of it differently for an emotional, a defined and undefined. I find if you're an emotional wisdom and you're at the high of your wave and you're dealing with stress, you can ride it really well. But we don't control our waves. Like, just to be aware, we do not control our waves. Our waves exist just like the sun, the waves of the ocean come and go. We don't control them. We can do things to make a low part of the wave stay low for longer, because we can affect that by our mental chemistry, like the chemistry of what we are. We could stay low longer, and we can take our highs down faster. Like, we can go down from a high pretty fast, but going to a high, I don't find it's not a controllable experience. So I can't say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to make it high. I can do meditation and I can clear my inner work. I can do inner work. I can get rid of the triggers. You talked about triggers. Stress isn't really a trigger. For me, triggers are when something shows up in your world. It's like activating some of your inner child or inner wounds that you've not really resolved. That'll take you down. But stress is, I think emotional people may have different ways of managing their stress. Maybe. I know a lot of emotional people will go very mental when they have stress, and they'll try to get out of their emotions a little bit. And I'm trying to think of the undefined people in terms of how they handle stress. I find that the undefined people, when they're in a really stressful place, can be very explosive emotionally and like really activate some of my triggers. But that's kind of, those are experiences. Those are from experience and having lived and been teaching myself the awareness of the two different types, for what it's worth.
Yeah, anything else to add with that?
This is such a great conversation. I'm learning so much.
I know.
But yeah, let's bop over to the undefined bullet points because we're running short on time.
Yeah, and I feel like we've probably hit most of these, but just to ensure, like, again, you know, we gain wisdom about emotionality over time through, you know, this amplification and observing process, and realizing what's ours and what's not, and kind of, again, it might take other trauma work or other work to clear what, you know, all the emotional things that you have attached to your own emotional, you know, how you react to things, how you see things, how the information goes through you, depending on your design and your experiences in life and childhood. But the undefined's not here for the consistent, intense emotions. They are here to, you know, experience them and let them move through. But again, if constant negative emotions are coming at me, I am probably going to be following my strategy and authority, waiting to get out of that particular situation. Okay, so again, let's see. Realizing emotions are not yours, being emotionally neutral and calm is the natural state. Refusing to run from confrontation and truth. Now, this is the healthy version of the undefined solar plexus. Being able to watch and surf the emotional wave. So for me, it feels more like it's kind of going through. It might feel like a surfing, like I'm just going to get on the river and kind of see where the flow takes me, and not needing to fix it or taking it on or lying to protect whatever the emotional reaction is going to be. And then, you know, just accepting that we are conditioned by the emotional, like anywhere that you're open in your chart, you're conditioned by the definition of that in the world, from others, the environment, your relationships, you know. So and just not identifying with that. With the way that it can show up is when we are not, you know, when we might still need to do some deconditioning in the undefined solar plexus, is being emotionally intimidated, afraid to rock the boat, identifying with the emotions that we're amplifying, you know, like I'm a crazy blah, and like, you know, explosive or whatever. It's like that explosive reaction to me is someone that maybe would, you know, is probably a not self. I mean, is a not self. See, even saying probably is probably the undefined solar plexus. Let me say probably to make it easier to digest. Yes. So being overly emotional or ice cold. So that can be sort of like, I'm not going to engage with that, you know, like that kind of thing can happen with the undefined solar plexus. Getting overwhelmed by others' emotions, lying to yourself and others out of not wanting to rock the boat. And for me, I've identified that's maybe not telling the whole truth in a direct way, sort of, and it depends on the rest of your design, but not fully just saying the thing because I don't want to deal with the emotional fallout or whatever. It can be, I think, let me be really nice. That Ra Uruhu, the founder, talks about, like, there's this smile, a certain smile that undefined solar plexus people have, because they're like, kind of like this, I won't be bothering you. Just, you can stay happy over there, like, I'm really nice, and all that kind of stuff. So that one has stuck with me because I'm like, I see my smile that does that. Just to be aware of, it's the mechanic. And let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. So I do love this. So I have the kind of some core clues and keys to, like, wrap it up with, but are there any other points from the undefined solar plexus people? Anything to add on that experience with dealing with emotionality, your own or others?
Well, your point about, not saying certain things to trigger certain people and having the everything's fine face really resonates with me. I'm fairly certain my dad is probably a defined solar plexus, just from, like, the descriptions I've heard. And there are conversations we cannot have. There are words I cannot say because he is a very emotional person, but he's not aware of that. And it like just resonates from him throughout the house and affects everybody around him. He ends up being very solitary, and it's big waves, big, really rapid waves. And it makes it difficult for myself and my mom, who I think is probably also undefined, to take those hits. And it feels wrong to say, but we have to kind of manage our interactions with him, which is unfortunate, but it's what it's ended up being.
Yes, I can relate very, very much to, I mean, most of us are, not most of us, many people would be the opposite of what their parents are or their partner are, because again, the genetic imperative, we naturally just are drawn to that. So I fully relate to everything you're saying. My mom was emotional. My dad was not. So I kind of watched that, not even watched, I wasn't aware of it, but it's like we've taken that in deeply. So that's what, in human design, there's 7 years of deconditioning. And when I came in, I was like, I've done all this personal work. I've done all this shadow work. I mean, I've dived deep in a lot of stuff. I was like, it won't take me 7 years, but it doesn't matter. All that was necessary to get to the human design point, and it still takes 7 years. There's so many layers, and then again, you still keep going after 7 years. It's not like that you're done, but I also, what you said reminds me to bring up that there are different kinds of waves. So depending on, if your dad had several channels and gates coming out of the defined solar plexus, there may be one wave that ratchets, and then that kind of ratchets up and then kind of goes back down like this. There may be one that's like pretty even and spikes, and then pretty even and then goes down and pretty, so, and then there might be multiple ones crashing over each other. And then you've got, I've got my oldest child is also defined, and then I got gates over here and undefined. And so, that's the experiment, as you kind of watch, if you could get his birth info, that would be like very eye-opening, probably, just to watch, and again, I have found at different points that I'm like, well, if only they were aware of their emotional wave. And it's like, well, of course that, but this is my relationship with myself, my own relationship with someone, with whatever emotionality is, it comes into my environment, comes out of my body, whatever, what can I see about myself with how I feel in this situation? Am I seeing it clean and clear? Is there a lot of stuff attached to it? Do I feel like I need to fix it or lie or whatever? Tiff, were you going to add something?
Yeah, but I didn't mean to have a sense of urgency.
Oh no, I think that was the point. That was the
well,
point.
I think the thing that's scary to me is that there's a sea of psychology. Like, I have a master's in health psychology, right? There's a sea of astrologers. There's a sea of counselors that will tell you that you have people-pleasing tendencies and you have to do these things. Now, I could talk about that in astrology with Libra or Gemini. I could identify some areas where you might be a people pleaser, just like in human design with this, like you might be kind of shying away from something. I don't relate to not telling the whole truth. I tell the whole truth no matter what. And then I also am scared of the reaction. And so there's lots of things. So I wouldn't identify as a people pleaser because I'm not. I just want you to not have an emotional reaction to everything I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like I'm just communicating information. I don't want to make it personal, not you personally. But the idea here is that what I love about human design is that we can see this through the lens of the individual. There's not like, I love Nicole Perla's account. Like I love Nedra, whatever her name is, like her account. Like there's so many things about codependency or people pleasing or recovery that speak to me, you know, but because they're marketed as this broad scale, this is what all y'all need to do. That's what freaks me out. And so having a lens to look at, and all we did today was just talk about the solar plexus for a little bit. Like there's 80 million other things going on for you as an individual, right? And so there are pieces that will resonate and that won't resonate as much. In recovery talk, you were talking about like hiding some information. Sometimes there's something that I use with my friend where it's the fade. If you're trying to fix, argue, defend, or explain, just back out of that conversation a little bit and do self-reflected consciousness. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I having this thought? Am I on somebody else's emotional wave? And I think that the piece of this conversation that I'm walking away with, it's like, it's so helpful to hear how Judith describes it, because it's different than, I mean, it's just helpful to hear it really, because it's like, just give some space and time. Now there's over here, it's like, when like when do you go back into that? And you can't answer that. So you get this huge lesson in patience and kindness that we all need anyways, grace that we all need anyways, and for everybody, right? So it's, I think being able to identify it is really huge in terms of relationships with others. And even if you don't know their birth time, even if we don't know their thing, there can be a little softness, a little kindness, like, oh, maybe they're an emotionally defined person that has been conditioned their whole life that they're this thing, and they've been marketed to in a homogenized way to heal it in this particular fashion, and they're just stuck on a wave. I can be like, oh, ha 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 about that, instead of take it so personally or try to help somebody identify what's wrong. There might not even be a need for that. It might not even affect the wave. It might make the wave worse, right? And I'm speaking from my chart, and as somebody who likes to learn from other people. So that's huge, hearing everything that you guys taught today. I mean, thank you, Alicia, for your time. And I just want to acknowledge we've been here for an hour, and thank you guys for being part of the membership. I'm so glad you're able to make it live. And we're just feeling it out if this time slot works. So everybody that didn't get to watch, do you have any last minute things for anybody that didn't get to watch, Leisha?
Well, I did get a question that was not related to solar plexus.
It's not related to solar plexus? You want to
wait for that one, or?
Yeah, let's wait for that if it's not related, and then we'll just maybe email or something else. But thank you guys for being on today and spending your lunch hour with us. We're trying to do this every first Thursday, and I just learn so much every time we gather and have these discussions. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time, hopefully.